and I learned this in the first one that we did with Shattuck St. Mary's, and it checks the box every single time along. Is this is the be all end all of this is the coaches. If the coaches are not on the same page, if they're not teaching what the organization wants taught or how they're going to educate the kids, connect with the kids, all of that, then it's all for naught. And the hard part for any organization is like, most of the time these are all volunteers. Like they're one of the kids' dads, or they're somebody that's been involved that wants to give back to their community, that has some hockey experience. So like when we say that all the pressure's on the coach's shoulders, and you kind of use the example of you're on the road, you have a bad tournament, and the parents are coming to you, like it's not easy being a coach in minor hockey, and it's not getting any easier. But there's also a lot of expectation that comes with it, right? So if anything else, and the easiest thing that an organization can do is to simply provide a roadmap for the coaches, that end of the year, this is what we expect of you, that your kids are able to understand, because when they go into next year, this is where we're starting. We're not going back and reteaching again. This is where we're starting. So it helps organizations be able to evaluate their coaches, because if they notice 10 of the 15 players aren't there, then that may have been a problem with the coach. It also gives the coach an opportunity to have some freedom in how they're going to teach it, but know what the end game is. And also use, not to say as a buffer or a mediator, but to also be able to use the organization to support them when they're getting cornered because the parent didn't like that they played this kid more than my kid, or we had a terrible tournament, these kids don't know what I passed, and you're following a mandate. It's not you've just created this system. This is an organizational decision.
Yeah, we're so not used to that over here.
Right,
Isn't
not at
crazy?
all.
That's so, and that's one thing that I try to sell that a lot when we're talking to parents, is that you are being coached by a network. You're not being coached by one individual. And so I want to stick on the coaching thing for a second, because I guess to you, from the conversations you've had, the research you've done, what does it mean to be a good coach? Because like from my perspective, and when I hear, I have to talk to so many parents on the daily, and what they say without being explicit about it, their expectations of a coach almost doesn't match what's necessarily appropriate, or they don't account for what might actually be appropriate. So like if some guy checks a box that he coached in X league for X team, it's like, oh, that's the shiny toy that we want. And that might not be the right thing for a U12 team, So when from these, you used coaching as the first pillar, and this is not that it's necessarily number one, it's just the first thing you mentioned, but I would say the same thing of the coach. The coach is super, super important, but maybe not for the reason that people think in terms of a credential or something like that. So what does that look 100%. Like from what you know?
Yeah, and interesting. So the Arizona Junior Coyotes was one that we did that I didn't mention earlier.
Gotcha.
So they're starting to come through. But such an interesting place in the world, because it's basically, as they've deemed it themselves, the retirement home of NHL players. So like when you look at their coaching list on their website, I mean, there's 6, 7, 8 guys that NHL experience that are on that team. And there's some coaches that have been there with NHL experience that it just wasn't a good fit. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be credentials that you're chasing, just like it doesn't have to be banners that you're chasing every year. It's somebody who can, number one, they've got to show that they care for the kids. You have to. There's a great psychologist. Her name is Dr. Jody Carrington. She presented at the Coaches Site Live a couple years ago. One of the best presentations I've seen in the ones that have been there. Her line that she's got is, you'll never realize how fast you can make a kid skate when you know the name of their dog. Like, and it's so true. If spending time with the kid to know what are they struggling at school, what are their brothers and sisters' names when they're older, what are their parents like, do they have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, what's that dynamic look like? Really truly show that you care about the kid, as opposed to it. And again, you're looking for the best for this kid. I think the other thing that we do in Canada specifically, as a reflection of how Europe looks at us, I've kind of come up with the saying or the idea of that we spend 95% of our time on 5% of our kids. We're not looking to develop all 17, 20 players on our team. We've got a couple of really special kids that we're able to push through that get drafted really high or whatever it is, and we hang our hat on that as a success. There's a lot of people that are spending a lot of money to put their kid in that are never going to play a professional hockey game, that might be doctors and might be lawyers and might own businesses and whatever, that are should and deserve the exact same type of treatment. Jung Alder Mannheim in Germany kind of uses this as an example, and Hermantown's the same thing. In like that's a small community that hockey is probably fourth or fifth on the popular sport list. So they don't have another kid that they can just grab, right? They've got to develop everybody, because if you've got 500 kids that come out to learn how to skate, when you get to your first team, that might be 8 kids. It might be, something like that. So you don't have a choice. You've got to develop everybody, because you also don't know who at 12 or 15 or whatever, the light's going to turn on and that kid's going to take off. Where I think we kind of fall into a trap again where, and I've, my little guy's 7. He played U9 this year as a goalie. Kids are being identified. He's a good player. He's a great one. Like they're not good players. They're 7, 8 years old. Like they're fine for what they are, but in most cases it's a breakaway contest. So like what skill are they picking up that they're going to learn next year? And it's kind of, okay, I see what you mean. But that's to me, that's where we kind of go wrong in that, and making sure that we're taking care of everybody. But another important thing for the coach when we talk about that player, parent, coach dynamic, and that realistically, that's a triangle. Like there's no, if one piece of that's missing, the whole thing's falling down. So you have to be, as a coach, you have to be crystal clear with your communication, not just with your players, but with your parents. They have to know what your mandate is, what your expectation is of your kid, of your team as a program, because kind of like you said, if you leave it up to translation, you're going to get 17 different translations. All of them are going to benefit the person that's doing the translating, or they're going to find the way that this is going to work best for their kid, and no one is going to be happy. And so as much as we roll our eyes when we talk about parents in general, and the vast majority of them are not the reason that we roll our eyes. If we exclude them from this conversation and we kind of put blinders on, and this is my team when they're here and this and that, it's real easy for them to plant a seed in their own head and translate what you're doing a different way. And if it's not to the immediate benefit of their own kid and the money that they're spending, it's going to be ugly.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that is funny with us is it doesn't matter what we talk about. We get like pushback from both sides on whatever we talk about. But when we're carving up the parents, people love to hear like the crazy parent story and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But there's just as much, which I think we try to do as balanced a job as we can, is poking at the coaches too, of like, you can't have an ego, man. Like how many coaches are just like, I have a no parent talk policy. Like I go through the play. It's like, they're kids, man. They're kids. If they're pros and it's their job, okay. Like, yeah, you talk to the player, like you don't have to call mom, but for these kids, they are kids, they don't have the maturity or the skills to engage with the coach and effectively understand what you're saying all the time.
Exactly.
So there's tons of blame, if you want to say blame, to put on coaches for these situations too. That's a good like visual is that triangle thing, right? You 100%. Need to have all 3 pieces of it.
If you're just like you said, if it's this is my team and the 4 hours that I have them this week, I'm going to teach them, and to hell with the people that are in the crowd, you're going to lose that team because you're going to lose the parents. And again, I use my little guy as an example all the time because I'm kind of starting to live the experience. Like, he's 7. He played up this year, so everybody else on that team is 8. Like, yeah, do I tell him that if he wants something that he should learn how to ask for it and have those conversations with an adult? 1,000,000%. but I don't expect the coach to come to him and explain why he's playing and why he's not
Yeah.
playing. That doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
so if you're not having that conversation as a coach, then you're doing a disservice to the player that's in that locker room and the parent. And there's a lot of reverberation around that other parents will see too. If I'm spending time talking to your kid and coaching him through, we're working on this, or maybe you could do this better, or whatever it is on the bench or in practice or afterwards, but you're not talking to this person's kid, they translate that too. And there's nothing, that's not a knock on anybody. That's just simply what you see because you're not connected. But if you're connected, if you're explaining, if again, when you have your parent meetings, when you do your parent surveys and things like that, like, you have got to be crystal clear of what this expectation is going to be, because you can use that to your own benefit when you say, listen, I told you at the beginning of the year, when we go to tournaments, we're playing the players that are working the best, we're rewarding our ice time at tournaments. It's not going to be 50-50-50 all the way through. We talked about that at the beginning of the year. If you don't have that conversation, man, God bless you, because no matter what you do, it's not somebody is going to be offended by it. And that's not going to smooth everything over, but it at least gives you some help as a coach to be able to guide through a year. Again, I'll use my little guy as an example. He played goalie, 7-year-old, first time ever as a goalie playing U9. I told him, listen, if you want to do this, it's not going to be pretty. We're learning this year. We're not losing, because it's not going to go well at the beginning. You're learning the position, all this stuff. And his coach did a fantastic job of talking to me about, hey, when we go to a tournament, we've got to play to win. I'm going to try to get him in, but it is what it is. And maybe he's fortunate because of the experience that I have, that but my only thing to him was, you got to tell him, as long as he knows. Because then when I get him in the car and I ask him what coach said, and he's able to relay to me, coach said he's going to play me on this game and this game. Okay, well, now we've set an expectation, right? If it's any different than that, I can have that conversation, or we can have that conversation, the three of us. But I think, as much as, and you're 100% right, as much as we love, or it's easy to talk about the crazy parents, the coaches in a lot of situations don't help themselves. Have you seen we see the videos of the parents fighting in the crowd, or the guy that goes on the ice that punches a referee, and like, that's
Yeah.
listen, that's his own problem,
Yeah.
right? That's far beyond hockey.
For sure.
But it also just gives you a second to kind of flip back to say, is everything okay here in this group, with this coaching staff, with these players, with this parent group? That, if everybody's kind of kosher, I don't know that happens, other than an extreme case.
Yeah, for sure.